Greeting coders. Today we're going to actually take a step back a little bit from designing our apps because I told you there was one more really powerful concept in computer science that I was going to teach you before the end of the school year. And I think actually now is a good time to do it so that you can incorporate it inside your app. And so let's go ahead and I want you guys to actually create this and send me a screenshot. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and go to create. We're gonna go to App Lab. And it's gonna, bring us to the App Lab that we're accustomed to. And today we're gonna write an application to print out the 12 months of the year. Okay. And I don't even want it to write it here. I want it to just write it here on the screen, on the console log. Okay. So I can use, something like write to screen or something. We can do that, or we can. I want to just do it doing the console log. So we're gonna write a program that writes the 12 months of the year in order, right? So how would we do that? Okay. So if you were just only doing that task, you would do something like this. You would say console log, and you go, okay, so let me think of the first month of the year, January, and then you'll write the same thing, but you'll put in February. And this is kind of like the manual way of doing this. And you're just going to go in there and enter in each month until you had 12 months. And you would go in here and you would type in manually February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Okay, so if you ran this program and you hit run, you would be able to write all 12 months of the year. Well, what if I told you to do it again? Do all of this again? Well, you would have to copy and paste it, copy and paste it, and copy and paste it. If I told you to keep doing it, let's say I wanted to make a calendar for the next 10 years, you would have to copy and paste this several times until you have like over 200 lines of code. And if you ever have the feeling that you're doing something manually, you probably was a smarter way of doing it. Well, what do we know about the months of the year? Well, the months of the year are always the same 12 months and always in this order. And they all are months of the year. Like they all fit a category, right? They should all share something in common. They're part of one group of the months of the year. So there should be a better way of doing this. Well, maybe you want to store it. Okay, well, how do you want to store it? All right, well, let's make a variable called month number one that's equal to January. And let's make a month called month number two called February. And we can do this too and create 12 variables so that we can store the value of this so that, you know, we could write console log instead of writing January, we could write month one, something like this. Well, if I do this, I do it in order. I put the variables on top and then print them out. Okay, so I still get January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. But that's not too smart either, because how does this really help me? All it does is just replace one string with another. So by doing this, I at least have stored the variables, the data, which is one of the four processes that a computer must do. Again, let's go ahead and remind ourselves that a computer needs to take input, spit out output. It has to be able to store data, and it has to be able to process data. So this part right here is the storing of the data. So we store the 12 months of the year because we're going to keep on using it. However, storing it like this is very inefficient because it's not categorized like they should be. So what do you think we need to do? We need to be able to create a list, right? A list called the months of the year or something like that. And that's just what we're going to do. So let me teach you how that works. So instead of creating 12 variables, one for each month of the year, how about we create just one variable called months? And inside of months, we're going to write all the months of the year. So like this. So February. Okay, so let's start with just January and February. Would this code work? Not really, because if the machine was reading this, it would think from here to here, I'm going to store the string or the text January into the variable months. But what does a comma mean? Well, it's not a comma usually what separates a list inside of English language or most languages. So a comma separates a list of things. Well, I don't know that January was part of a list yet. So you need to add some syntax to let me know that what I'm storing into the variable months is a list of items. And that syntax is a square brace. So if you have a square brace in the front and in the back of your list, you now have been able to store two things into one variable. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what this looks. So if I print now console log and now type in the word months, it will now print January and February. Okay, and now this code doesn't work anymore. So now my one console log prints all the months of the year, or at least the 2 months of the year, January and February. And you can even hit this little drop down arrow and see that January is in the 0 spot of the list and February is in the first spot of the list, or the array number 1 spot of the list. So in computer science as a whole, to be efficient, all lists start with the number 0. So this is the 0 spot, this is the first spot. So let's go ahead and add the rest of our months into here. So I'm going to go ahead and take this code here, copy and paste it over here instead. And then I'm going to go ahead and delete all of these and make it March. I'm just going to delete all of the console logs and the left curly brace and just split everything up in commas. So I'm going to go over here, turn this into a comma, take copy from here to here, turn this into a comma, copy from here to here, make this, take from here to here, highlight all of this, turn that into a comma, take this, highlight up to here, and turn this into a comma, and highlight into here and here, make this into a comma, highlight from here to here, make this into a comma, highlight from here to here and make that a comma, and highlight from here to here and make that a comma. And make sure at the end of our list that we have a square brace. So a square left brace, a square right brace, and now we have a list that has all 12 months of the year inside of one variable. So now you see like that 12 lines of code can now be condensed to only 2 lines of code. And now we have print all 12 months of the year, and they're categorized in a list from January all the way to December. Again, see that the 11th position of the list is December because the zero ID or index of the list is January. So again, important thing to remember is that lists always start with the number 0. Okay, and well, Mr. Win, this doesn't actually print the 12 months of the year in 12 different lines like we originally did. Well, is there a way to access a certain spot inside the list? And the answer is yes. So suppose I wanted to print out March. Well, how can I print out March only when I only have one variable that talks about all 12, 12 months of the year all stored into one variable? How do I access March? Well, you can do it like this. Console log months, and inside square braces, you put the number that you want to access. So this is position 0, position 1, position 2, or index 0, index 1, index 2. So we're going to put the number 2 inside curly braces. And now if I want to print out just March, I can do months square brace 2 inside. Hit reset, hit run. And now you can see that I was able to print out March as a month by itself. So suppose that I say, hey, I want you to print 12 months of the year, but I want you to do it like we did before, all vertically, starting with January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, all the way down. Well, would you have to sit here and do this again? So if I had to go back and go, okay, well, he wants to do it in order, sure. So he told me that 0 is the first index. I'm going to copy and paste this, and I'm going to copy it and now make it 1. And I can keep doing this until I'm done with all 12 months of the year. Well, again, when you do something this repetitive, you should be asking yourself, is there a smarter way? Right? I got January, February, March, April, and I can keep doing this. Well, if you look at the code, what's the only thing that's changing? Oh, the number. Oh, the number's going up by 1. I wonder what that looks like. Oh, it looks like a counter. Oh, I could probably make some type of loop that does this for me. And I can reduce my code down to something very small. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to delete this and instead use a loop. So we have learned, let's see, how many types of loops have we learned? Let's go ahead and go to data. Not data, I'm sorry, control. In control, we have learned 2 types of loops, a for loop and a while loop. A while loop is good when you know a certain condition like true or false, like while the number is less than 100 or while the player has not entered key down or something, right? So we have these types of loops, but a for loop is a loop that counts from 0 to some number. Well, this is exactly what we would use because we're going to start with the index 0 and go all the way to index number 11. So that's what we're going to use. Go ahead and use a for loop. So for I equals 0, I less than 4, well, do we have 4 inside our list? We have 12 inside our list, right? I++ again means just every single time this loop goes, add 1 to the value I. Now we type in console log months. And now we're going to put in little curly braces. We're not going to put a number. We're going to put the variable I that goes up by 1 every single time. So I will start at 0, then I will come to 1, and I will come to 2, and I will come to 3, and then I will go all the way to 11 because when I is 11, 11 is still less than 12, and index 11 is December. And when I goes to 12, well, is 12 less than 12? False. It's going to break out of the loop. And now with just 4 lines of code, you're able to write me the 12 months of the year. Okay, so ahead and reset, hit run, and look, you were able to create the same list that we did at the beginning of our exercise without having to write this console log over and over and over again. And here's the great part. Well, what if I wanted to write this list again? Like, do I go back and change my code? How do I make it go back again? Well, let's say you don't want to print just 12 months of the year, or the 12 months of the year. You want to do it twice. Well, do I have to copy and paste this? Yeah, you can do that. You can copy and paste this for loop and make another loop and then do it again. But here's a smarter way. What if I change 12 months to 24 months and, well, Mr. Wynn, if you change it to 24, the list doesn't go to 24. Well, yes, I don't have a list of 24, but I know ability to go back to the beginning of the list, right? So I can go from here and go back to here. Well, how do you do that? Well, what is next, for example, number 13 on this list? Well, 13, if you subtract 12, it would go back to January, right? So what about the 14th month of the year? Well, the 14th month of the year is technically what? February. I just got to subtract 12 from this number when the number is greater than 12. So any number greater than 12, I subtract 12 from it, and it'll come back to beginning of the year. So if I wanted again to make to tell you guys an exercise to make the calendars for the next 10 years, you can just change this number. However, you do need to, again, to subtract 12, what we call module. Okay, so I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it is the number. I believe it is the divide sign, but I just want to make sure. I'm not. So let's see. I think it's modular 12. Let's see if that gives me the remainder. So let's go ahead and try this now. Hit reset, hit run, and I was right. So what does this little percent sign do? It's called modular. It basically says, okay, whatever the number I is, divide it by 12, and whatever the remainder is, give me the remainder. So for example, let's just go ahead and show it to you. Uh, no, I'm not sure going to show it to you. No, let me show it to you. Okay, so this part you don't have to copy because it's not relevant to the exercise itself, but I do want to show you what's going on behind the scenes. Okay, so you know what modular does. So let's just go ahead and do a console log. Okay, I basically copy the same code here, and I'm just going to show you a couple ways to kind of help you see what's going on. I is equal to, well, whatever I is, right? And then let's go ahead and give it a little space here. No, actually not give it a space. And then I'm going to put a little plus sign at a string, space. Okay, so I divided, or modular 12 is equal to, so I'm kind of giving you kind of a little text-based thing to kind of show you what the value is. So I'm going to put in parentheses I modular 12. Okay, that's it. So basically, this is going to kind of show you what the value of I is and what I mod 12 looks like. So here's our list. So when I is equal to 0, well, what's 0 divided by 12? Well, 0 divided by 12 is 0. Well, we're not asking for the 0. I'm asking for the remainder of what I divided by 12 is. So what's the remainder of I mod 12? 0. And we covered this in class before, but kind of a good refresher. Let's take a number like 15. What is the remainder of 15 divided by 12. Well, 12 goes into 15 one time, but has a remainder of 3. So modular, you can think about it as mathematical remainder, right? It's the remainder of division. So let's say 23. What is the if I is 23? What is um, the modular or the remainder if of 23 if I divided it by 12? Well, 12 goes into 23 um, one time and has a remainder of 11. Let's take 12. Well, what is 12 modular 12? Well, it's basically the remainder of 12 divided by 12. Well, 12 divided by 12 is equal to 1 with no remainder, which is why I modular 12 is equal to 0. Okay, so that's kind of just telling you how the code works. I'm going to go ahead and just leave it here because, again, I wanted to teach you how you could make, for example, 10 months worth of this just by simply going, well, 10 months of, January and February is 120 months. Change this into 120 months. And now your program, if you hit run, prints out 10 months worth of years, or 10 years worth of months, sorry, 10 years worth of months. And we were able to do it with very little amounts of code. Okay. And again, the whole purpose of this exercise is to introduce to you one of the most important ways we store data. We don't just store data in individual variables like month number 1, month number 2, month number 3, month number 4. We store variables inside of lists and categories. And in math and inside computer science, we call them arrays. Okay, so the word is arrays. Let's go ahead and rename our project. Okay, and this is the one I want you to take me a screenshot of when you are done. This is called arrays. Okay, okay, array program number 1. Let's just call it array program number 1. Okay, and hit save. Okay, so again, for your assignment, I want you to basically create this program, arrays program number 1, and give me a screenshot. Okay, so just go ahead and let's go ahead and just change it back to 12 months of the year. Hit run, and that's it. And you guys don't even have to do this part, um, but you can leave it there if you want. I want to see that you have a program that can write all 12 months of the year in basically 3 lines of code. Okay, all right. And I will see you guys tomorrow with more ways that we could use arrays. Okay, list. Okay, think of arrays as the word list, a list of information.